Today's guest is Brandi Williams, the founder of SoulMed Holistic Health Collaborative, a mental health coaching organization specifically and strategically targeting Black women on the brink of burnout. SoulMed provides strategies, products, group coaching, workshops, digital content, experiences, and resources to support stress reduction and holistic improvements of mental health. But this isn't just work for Brandi. Her commitment to SoulMed is deeply, deeply personal. And it's nothing more than an honor and a pleasure for me to welcome Brandi Williams to Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. Brandi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. More than anything, I'm excited to have a good conversation with an old friend.
I know that's right. I know that's right. And it's funny because we have known each other for so long. And I've always seen and felt and just embraced you as being someone who I found to be just completely magnetic and energetic and dynamic and outwardly fearless, right? But what I realized in prepping for this interview is, bitch, I don't know you at all. There's so many things. There's so many layers. And that's how we all are, right? All of
Yeah.
us are really Auntie Viola from How to Get Away with Murder, taking off our wig at the end of the day, getting the lashes off, and laying in a pool of our own mess. But we present outwardly what we want the world to see. But I was going through some of the just the info and just doing the research, and I was like, wow, Mama has lived a life. There's so much going on, and who knew all of this was going on. But I believe all of that has led you to exactly where you are today. So kind of the first step in dealing and getting to the place of SoulMed, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, is just dealing with you.
Yeah, dealing with
Dealing with
me.
you.
And as someone said to me, dealing with my mother, and it's like the shit that lives in the process, right? So dealing with that, and I guess the kids call it getting it out the mud. So yeah, there's been a whole lot of mud for me to mud up out of.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start there. Let's start with the mud and like where it all started for you. So I've known Brandi since probably middle school.
Seventh
And
grade drama class.
yeah, and
Mhm.
I wouldn't have known any of what was going on at the time because that wasn't our connection or our life. It was school, it was business, it was we're here
Mhm.
to do a thing. But personally at home, talk about your life growing up. First of all, where'd you grow up? Let's talk about that. Let's start there.
The Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina.
QC. Brandi is one of QC's finest, honey.
You
Holding
are
it down.
too.
Well, I try. I
You may be
try.
ATL living, but baby, you got your roots right
I'm
here.
QC all the way, every day. So, grew up Charlotte, North Carolina. And who all lived in the home with you?
So I was born into the home. It was my grandmother, my mom, and my mom's older sister. So, and
Mhm.
that was pretty much who lived in the household with me as I grew up for most of the part, except um, my sister came along when I was 6. So she actually then, of course, lived in the home with me. And then there was a time that my mom and I and my sister moved out, so it was just the 3 of us. So
Mhm.
basically, that was like who was in my home most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me so your grandmother was a very big part of your life. Yeah.
A huge part of my life,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And so that was she kind of the nucleus of your village?
Yeah, absolutely. So my grandmother had 5 kids. Her oldest was a boy, and
Mhm.
then she had 4 girls after that. My mom was the youngest. And we were like our own big little family. I don't know. I remember being in school, elementary school to be exact. And when we would come back to school and talk about what we did for the holidays, most of the white kids would talk about just what they did with their mom, dad, and so I was really my family view was everybody. It was my
Yeah.
grandmother, it was my aunties, it was my cousins.
Yeah.
And so when they talked about their family, I was like, gosh, they family real small. I felt bad for them personally, because how can you not have Easter cookout with Easter Monday at
Yes.
Carowinds with your
Oh,
cousins and
oh yeah.
all your
Yeah.
aunties and cousins? And we used to do, and we just talked about this past Easter, we used to do performances for our aunts and uncles and my grandmother. So like we would go off in a room and
Yeah.
create a dance performance and come back. So yeah, so we were like, so that was my family, right? So
Yeah.
although in my household it was a fewer number of people, when I thought about family, I thought about everybody.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a lot of women, right?
Hmm.
Women raised you. Where was your dad?
Hmm. Off doing whatever he was doing, honey. I
Mhm.
wasn't in his 5-year plan, so he was off making a living. He was an engineer
Mhm.
and working in Oregon in the early years of my life. So,
Wow.
um, I want to say he probably stayed in Oregon until I was about 10 or 11.
Mhm.
So, from I didn't meet him in person until I was 8, and we would talk on the phone um,
So wait a
before
minute. You
then.
never met your dad until you were
Hmm.
8. You
Hmm.
talked to him. You had
Hmm.
conversations with him via phone, but never
Hmm.
met him. What kept that meeting from happening?
Him,
Mm.
I wasn't in his 5-year plan, and he was serious about that, right? Like he had a plan, a 5-year plan, and that's all that he was worried about, concerned about, and all that he was going to do was his
Mm.
5-year plan. And so he wasn't really interested in doing anything else with me, for me, about me until that 5 years was up. So it was around 5 or 6 that we were supposed to go live with my dad, my mom and I.
Mhm.
And I was really excited about it. And then he found out that she was pregnant with my sister and decided that it was a wrap. Like we couldn't come.
And this was in the midst of you guys like packing up boxes and like literally getting ready to go, that he drops a bomb that you cannot come, do not come here, right?
Yeah, girl, I was so excited, right? Like I wanted to have a mom and dad, like that unit. I wanted that. I
Mhm.
craved
Mhm.
that. I'm not even
Mhm.
sure why. I don't remember like my elementary school years. I'm not sure I remember any of my friends. I'm like looking off because I'm trying to think.
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
sure I remember any of my friends who actually had a two-parent home, but I craved that. And maybe it was because I didn't
Mhm.
see it. I wanted it and I saw it on TV.
Sure, sure.
Um, so I wanted that. And so yeah, my mom let me help address the boxes that we were shipping off. They were all lined up in the room, ready to be shipped. And I had told everybody who would listen, especially my mean music teacher. And I won't say her name because I'm actually kind of fond of her now. But I told her after Christmas, I ain't coming back. You ain't gonna see me no more. And I remember going back to school and her saying, I thought that you weren't going to be back. Like it felt like she hated me as much as I hated her. Um, so it was like a huge letdown for me.
Mhm.
And it changed my relationship with my mom,
Mhm.
which I think was a key and pivotal moment for how my life ended up happening,
Mhm.
or some of the things I experienced moving forward, and some of the ways I learned um, to behave, to cope, to live. I started fawning, showing up as a people pleaser, mainly because I wanted that connection back with my mom.
Mm. So, what was the connection before? You said everything changed and your relationship with your mom changed at that point. Let's talk about what it was like before and then after the move didn't happen.
So before, my mom was always really happy, upbeat. We talked, we enjoyed each other's company. She was my best friend. I
Mhm.
actually would cry if she left. I'm like, I want to be with my mom. And it was
Mhm.
because we just had such a good relationship. I will never forget. I don't know if anybody remembers golden cheese crackers. They were spicy little cheese crackers. And my mother would bring me a bag home every single day she came home from work. She had this blue hat that she always wore, and she didn't have a car, so she rode public transportation. And whenever we would go out together, she'd have that blue hat on, and she'd be strutting down the street, and all the men
Mhm.
are looking, and I'm like, my mama bad, honey. She is bad. Um, and it was just like that, her confidence and her zest for life, it was
Mhm.
gone. And she retreated inside, and it was like she pushed me away.
Mm.
And I wanted that back. I wanted what we had
Mhm.
before back. And so I kind of owned, without anybody asking me to, but on my own, I owned making her happy,
Do you
right?
think that did you think, and I'm not saying that this was the case, but did you think at the time that you were the reason that your dad said, no, you guys can't come?
I'm not sure that at that time I even understood why we couldn't come.
Yeah.
Um, I just knew the person who had been responsible for my happiness could no longer really provide emotional
Mhm.
support and
Yeah.
security for me in the way that she had before.
Because she was going through it herself.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you became a person that, okay, if she can't make me happy, I'm going to make her happy.
I
Yeah.
wanted my mom to be happy.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to get back to where we were. And I wanted her to live, and I wanted her to be happy. I wanted to see her smile again. So yeah, I was like, okay, so what can you do to make your
Mm-hmm.
mom happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember always saying to her, well, mom, I'm going to do this. My mom is very, very, very religious. She's into the church. And so I remember telling her one time that I was going to be a pastor, like a lady who lived next door to me. And she actually was caring for her mom. So I was like, that's so honorable. I'm going to do that for my mom. I said, Mom, I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to be a pastor, because I'm thinking she's going to be like amazing. But because she's
Mm-hmm.
Catholic, she was like, women don't belong in the pulpit. And like that was
Mm.
her response. And so I was like, well, daggum. I mean, and that was just one thing that I remembered of a number of
Yeah.
things that I had tried over and over again. And I would hear her crying at night. And I would just, think, well, you be good so that she can be okay. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
another reason that she's sad.
Yeah.
It's making me
Just
kind of emotional.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Because it sounds like even at a young age, 5, 6, 7, 8, you're taking responsibility for your mom's happiness.
Mhm.
And as an adult woman, I know that we're having your own kids, that your children are not responsible for your happiness or to make you happy. That's a kind of an inward job. Um, but with our young minds at 5, 6, 7, right? We don't understand that. We just want to see our parents happy and
Yeah.
well.
And I think the other thing is, like, with my mom, like, she didn't ask me to do any of this.
Of course.
And I'm not even sure that she fully realized that that's what I was trying to do.
Hmm.
Um because I didn't realize it. Like, hindsight being what it is, I can see that I
Hmm.
was definitely trying to find a way to make her happy, and
Make it all better.
yeah,
Make
make
it all
her feel
better.
better. Yeah.
So it sounds like your focus shifted from, okay, I want to have this happy family. I want to go be with my dad. We're finally going to be this unit um to okay, now we're not going there. My mom's here. She's not well. I have to make this situation better. Um you know, I'm wondering in all of this, because you have your maternal grandmother here, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
She's with you. She's kind of a constant. I often wonder when I hear stories like this, like what was the other grandmother doing at the time? Like, did she know, how much did she know about you? How connected was she with you? Did she approve of this 5-year plan that dad had to not be involved at all in his kid's life? And then furthermore, hither and too, your kid is going to come and live with you, and now you're pushing them away again and further, like not taking responsibility for your family.
So, um, my paternal grandmother and I actually had these conversations once I got older because our relationship has been difficult at best. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
actually meet her in person until I was 11.
Whoa.
Um, my dad never told his parents that he had a child. My mother had to call them when I was 3 months old and say, "Hey, did you know you have a granddaughter?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was a slow process for us building a relationship. One thing that I credit her with that is a huge part of who I am today is making me extremely proud of being Black. So she was raised in Chicago, but her family's from Meridian, Mississippi originally, and she has a very deep understanding, having grown up in Chicago, of um, civil rights and what civil rights should look like. So the first time that I met her, she handed me this membership card to Rainbow Push. I had no clue what Rainbow Push was, but it was Jesse Jackson's civil rights
Mm-hmm.
organization. And so I had a Rainbow Push membership at 11. She would send me what I call now the Chicago boxes, and they would be full of Black history books, Black baby dolls. She would ask me, "Do you have Black babies, baby dolls?" And at the time in North Carolina, there were no Black baby dolls
Mm-hmm.
on the
Mm-hmm.
shelves. And so I would be
Mm-hmm.
like, no. And I didn't really understand the importance of
Mm-hmm.
that. And
There's like one Black Barbie and one Black Cabbage Patch. That was it.
honey, that was by the time that was like middle school. We didn't even have that in
Yeah.
elementary school. So she did like around, I would say, late middle school, fifth, sixth grade, going into late elementary school, going into middle school. She did start reaching out more, but she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't very present. And when we did talk about it later, she shared that her perspective and my dad's side of the story. So to say that she agreed with him, I can't say yes that she agreed with his choices necessarily, but she did understand her son and she was standing by him and was not going to disparage his character to his daughter,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which didn't help our relationship at all.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, how do you digest that? Like, as an adult, like with your own mind, like now, just even thinking about it, how do you digest that? That right is right and wrong is wrong, and what I needed was family, and certainly my mom provided that for me, but a good chunk of that was missing, and it was missing by choice, not by you know not knowing.
Right. And I think they also had these views of my mom and my family that quite honestly pissed me off. So things actually, the first time I ever visited with them was when I maybe just turned 12, and that Christmas, it was the Christmas of 88, because that was the last Christmas I got to spend with my maternal grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't want me to go. I didn't want to go. I cried. She bought me all these new clothes because, of course, the temperature difference between Chicago and
Yeah.
North Carolina in the winter. And so I was flying alone by myself for the first time. And, I
Mm-hmm.
remember my grandmother coming over to our house because at that point we had moved out of her house for a few years. And she came over to bring me all the stuff she bought from Kmart. I was so excited. And I remember getting to Chicago and my paternal grandmother opening my suitcase and saying, "What is this? SHIT. You can't wear this. Like, this is cheap clothes." And because I was 11 or 12, I really think I was 12 because it was Christmas, so my birthday had come around. Um, I, couldn't say what I wanted to say, but I was offended, right?
Yes,
Because
of
these are the
course.
people who had provided for me, cared for me, and your son wasn't
Right.
doing a damn thing for
Right.
real,
Right.
right? So that offended me. Fast forward 5 years to when I was 16 and I went to visit again for Christmas. And I overheard my grandmother and my dad's youngest brother talking negatively about my mom, my grandmother, who at this point had passed, um, me. And so my grandmother at that time was doing yoga and walking in the park early in the morning. So she meditated, did yoga, and then she went for a walk in the park. And so while she was out, I called my mom and told her what I'd overheard. Well, my mom called back and laid my grandmother out. So my grandmother confronts me and says, how dare you use my phone and my long distance to call your mother and tell her about, something that I said in my house where I pay the bills, blah, blah, blah. Now, mind you, my dad is standing here watching this interaction. Mm-hmm. And so we're going back and forth. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I do remember at this point, my grandmother told me I was, that the things that I was saying to her were disrespectful, and that there's a fine line between adult and child. And I was coming very close to crossing it. I said, well, draw the line so I can cross over it and we can have this conversation as two adults.
Now that's the Brandi I know. There she
is. And so at that point, that's when my dad decided to say, okay, let's go. And he didn't correct, mm-hmm. He didn't stop. He just let it go on, the bickering going, mm-hmm. back and forth, back and forth. And he finally said, well, how about we go get Chinese food? And then, he wanted to have this conversation when we went to get something to eat, to explain to me about, who my grandmother was and, how she was really a good person and whatever. And I was like, yeah, but what that told me that I didn't know that I was internalizing at that moment was that I didn't have anybody to protect me, to stand up for me, that he was not going to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. He would sit back and watch it all go down. But when it came to standing in the gap and being there to say, no, you're not going to talk about her or mine in this way, he would not do that for you.
Mm-mm, never. And that continued, like his actions, for years continued. It transferred over to the way he started treating my kids. And it's part of, like, largely the reason that we are no longer in communication today. And that's a boundary that I set. I changed my phone number in January of 2022. Yep, January of 2022. And he cannot contact me at all.
Mm-hmm. What was it that led to just finally drawing that line in the sand for you?
I made a decision to take care of myself. Mm-hmm. Right? I had put up many boundaries for him. I had spent, the best part of my life really trying to understand him and give him a chance. And, this whole concept of, because it's family, you have to stay in communication. And especially it's your mom and it's your dad. I was just like, yeah, I'm over it. I'm not interested in maintaining a relationship with you. And I have the right to say that. I have the right to not have a relationship with you. And because you've shown me you're not willing to change, you're committed to being the same person. And like I told him and I told my mom, if he were just any random person that I met on the street, there is nothing about him that would make me say we should be friends. So it was time for me to say bye. And it was for me so that I could be able to move forward. So I've been on an extreme healing journey. Like, I've been kind of tiptoeing and dancing with this journey since I was probably about 16, right? Mm-hmm. But I made a decision to be committed to myself in January of 2022. And I knew that I had to let that relationship go. So I often tell my clients, or I ask them, how much are you willing to sacrifice to save your life? And I was willing to sacrifice that relationship to save my life.
That's major. So how did your mom respond to you setting this boundary with him?
She wasn't happy. She really wanted me to maintain that relationship with him. It's your dad. you only get one father. And, I was like, and he only gets one me. And he should have honored and cherished me when he had the opportunity. And so at this point, I gotta take care of Brandi.
Mhm.
And I'm not disrespectful to him. And part of the reason that I'm walking away is so that it doesn't get to the point where I am disrespectful with him.
Mhm. It's interesting that you have made your way through life, dealing with this person, or forcing yourself to try and deal with this person, watching him not deal with you, not deal or acknowledge your family, not deal with his inaction, and deal with his mother, or deal with your mom for that matter. And yet and still your mom just didn't necessarily feel comfortable with you setting that boundary for yourself and saying, I choose me in this moment. I have to stand up for me if no
Hmm.
one else can, and I don't want to allow this person to continue to negatively impact my wellness, my well-being, my mental health. um how does that feel for you, just knowing that, like, even though I've made this decision, I still have someone who's been wronged by this person, by the way, telling me I should continue to try and have a relationship with him?
One of the things that I love about my mom the most is her heart.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the other things that I've understood about Black people, Black women in particular in the South, and religion is that it is literally their how they walk. That's their walk. That's their guide for
Mhm.
how they live their lives.
Mhm.
And so she, hung on to the honor your mother and your father for your
Mhm.
days,
Mhm.
will be short if you don't. And I'm sure that that's a very loose paraphrase of the commandment.
Mhm.
But I'm more spiritual than I am religious. And the God that I serve, I don't believe wants me to be hurt and in bad situations. And so I had to, just let her know that it's a boundary that I'm setting, and you can have whatever relationship you want with him. Um, but it's not one that I choose to maintain. And for the health of our relationship, I would prefer that you didn't bring him up or
Mhm.
um, try to convince me to be in a
Mhm.
relationship with him, because that's just going to create tension between us that doesn't need to exist.
Right. 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 Well, you've gotten to in the arc of the story of Brandy, we've gotten to a place where you've been able to set a boundary, but I want to go back just a few steps
Okay.
and figure out how we got to the place of setting the boundary, because there is a certain level of confidence that we all, in some point in our lives, right? We've all been there where we figured out that, "Ooh, I'm probably the one that needs to change here. I got to do something different, because the situation isn't changing." And whether that happens at 5, 16, 18, 23, or 43, right? There has to be a time where we decide, okay, I have to be the change. I have to make those changes. So I really want, before we get into SoulMed, I want to talk about your therapy journey,
Mm,
and something that you hinted to earlier, because as a community, I feel like therapy is such an untapped resource for Black people, men and women. I feel like it's an untapped resource for us. And I feel as though more and more of us are exploring the option of therapy, which I'm truly happy about. But the reality is we come from a generation of people who were masters at repressing trauma. That's just what we did. That's what we had to do. We kept moving, in spite of adversity. We neglected our self care because self care was not the priority. Survival was the
mhm.
priority. So, what self care for who and what? Like that, it had nothing to do with that. I just need to make sure that I can stay alive to see another day. Um, what was the turning point for you? Because there were several moments throughout your childhood that you've already talked about, and I'm sure several that you haven't, where therapy would have been a good option, would have been a great option for you. What was the point where you said, for you, enough is enough? I'm going to take my Black ass to therapy.
So my therapy journey started in college, and I can't remember what triggered it, but I decided I needed to go to student health and see a therapist. And it was a white male. And the first couple of therapy sessions were cool. And then I remember at the end, I probably did like 3. I remember at the end of the second therapy session, it might have been the third, which was the one that made me say I'm not going back. He we were talking a lot about my dad. So I went in the first therapy session and I was just like, all the things. And he was like, hold up. So we need to deal with one thing. What's the one thing that we can deal with? And then maybe we'll get to the other things. But what do you think is the one thing that's at the center of all of this? And I think at that time, I was really conflicted about my relationship with my dad. So I focused on that, right? And so as we talked about what was going on, he said, well, maybe you should write a letter to your father explaining to him how you feel. And I was like, yo, this white man is crazy. He doesn't understand. And I abandoned therapy because I didn't understand what he was telling me, which I believe today is wise counsel, right? I felt like this was a personal value and of mine, that you should be able to have a conversation with a person. My mom's very big on looking people in the eye, being direct, enunciating your words, and having difficult conversations with people. So for me, writing a letter was like taking the cowardly lion way out. And so I was like, this man really doesn't understand that's not culturally what we do. We talk to each other. So you're supposed to help me figure out how to tell this man all this stuff and be comfortable with it. And he could sense that I was uncomfortable because, again, this is my dad and your parents are deities. In so much that your mother is like the chief deity, your parents kind of share that role as well. And so and although he wasn't around, again, I just told you about, after I made a decision, how my mom felt about me making that decision because it was my dad. So it was a real delicate balance for me. So I quit going. Things would get bad. I would go to therapy. I would abandon it. Sometimes because the therapists were just horrible. Other times because I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it. And let me qualify that. They weren't horrible people. They just weren't for me. So when I say horrible, the situation with me and that therapist were not really, it wasn't, they weren't what I needed.
It wasn't a good fit. What it sounds like actually is some of them could have been a good fit for you had you understood more about the process of therapy.
Exactly.
And maybe taking more time to explain to you where they were going with this and why they were asking you to do the things they were asking you to do. Because culturally on the surface, it might have seemed like, okay, this ain't, you don't understand me, mine, right? But what they were asking you to do was stretch beyond culture and just like look at the black and white of it all, look at the facts of what was going on, peel back some layers, do the bare minimum of work, not stretch yourself to the point of confrontation, but like just put it down on paper first. We'll get to the confronting, we'll get to talking to him directly, we'll get to all the things you want to get to, but let's just write it down first. And you were already at 10 wanting to just go hard and get and clear it off your plate. Like, let's get this over with.
And that's literally my personality to this day. I'm like, okay, let's go. Right. But I think what I've learned along the journey, the other thing is that we walk into therapy the way we walk into a doctor's office, looking at them as the professionals, and they are going to prescribe something that's going to make us feel better. So I remember after I got divorced, going to the psychiatrist for my medication. And I'm thinking that, this medication is going to make me feel better. And I'm like, why am I still not feeling better? And it was because, partially because it was the wrong medication for me, but also because I think I had a false idea of what the medication was going to do for me. And so I had to shift my thinking about what therapy is actually does. And one of my greatest learnings is that therapy works when you are self-aware. Therapy works when you're willing to be vulnerable, when you don't have to be right, when you're willing to be honest with, if no one else, yourself. Right? Even if you lie to your therapist when you go in there, be honest with yourself. I mean, you should not lie to your therapist. Like I tell my kids,
Really
don't lie to me.
Y'all are paying me to lie. Don't do that. Just tell me the truth.
Just
I'm not.
tell me the truth.
I can handle it. I promise you, I can. Don't lie to me.
I
I'm
think
gonna call
it's
you out because I
judgment.
usually know, but yeah, it is judgment. It's judgment, and it's just it's
The
it's
fear
the
of judgment.
It's
Yeah.
back to that Viola Davis thing, right? I come in and I'm presenting, myself, the person, the mask, the everything that I want you to think, but in reality. And I said this when we did the trailer for this podcast, like we're all a big mess out here. We all are. We all have our baggage. We all are, we all present our best self, but in reality we all have things that we have to work on. So let's just put it all out there on the table. If you can't do it anywhere else, the one place you should be able to do it is at your therapist's office, especially if you're paying them.
Yes.
Tell them the truth.
Yeah. And so that I think that realization helped therapy start to work better for me. Right. And I got to the place where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was sick and tired of going to different therapists. I was sick and tired of trying to find the right thing. But along the way and having the wrong therapist, I started learning the language and matching up what I needed. Right. So there are therapists that do or specialize in certain in different types of therapeutic modalities. And so I started learning those things and saying, okay, well, that's the thing that I need. So I need to find somebody who does this thing. I need to find someone who specializes in trauma, and understanding that I had been through trauma and where that trauma had come from, so that I could really to have that conversation. And when I walked in therapy in January of 2022, I walked in wanting to improve my relationships across the board. I didn't have quality relationships, and that's the thing that really bothered me. And so in the process of doing that, we started to uncover some of the sources of trauma, the root cause of the reasons that my relationships weren't good, how I was showing up different than what I wanted, who I wanted to be. I was projecting someone and not really being authentic or true to myself, which was making life very difficult, which made these relationships difficult, because when it got time to get intimate or vulnerable in relationships, either I went fake or I gave too much and I was too vulnerable to the wrong people. Right. It also forced me to look at the value and judgment that I put on people. Like I, would look at people and be like, okay, she's not pretty, she can't be my friend. I remember literally that was how I picked my friends when I was younger. I wanted to be friends with pretty girls. So if I thought you were pretty, you were going to be my friend. If I didn't think you was pretty, you could not be my friend. That's a true story. That's an absolutely true story.
All your friends are gorgeous, though.
I don't have that requirement anymore. I gave that up probably middle school, like late middle school going into high school. But I mean, that was a real thing for me.
Gosh.
And I remember in the 4th grade, one of my friends telling me, like, because I also was trying to bribe them to be my friends. I didn't think that by myself I was enough. 4th grade, I remember stealing my aunt's eyeshadow to take to school to give as a gift to my friend. Girl, I was giving used eyeshadow to my friend as a gift. And so she was like, first of all, I don't wear eyeshadow. My mama won't let me wear this. You need to take this back because I can tell it ain't yours and it's used. And third of all, I don't need a gift for you to be my friend. I'm your friend because I like you. I mean, imagine 2 4th graders. I don't know what age are we in 4th grade? Like,
oh my gosh, like 9.
Yeah,
maybe?
2 9-year-olds having this conversation.
Where is she today? My God.
At 9 years old, I didn't feel enough.
And in 2022, you laid it all down and said, okay, now I'm ready to deal with the 9-year-old who doesn't feel like she was enough.
Mhm.
I'm ready to actually not pretend to deal with it or just surface level deal with it, but really get into it with the 9-year-old
And I
who just
remember,
didn't feel like she was enough.
you remember at Piedmont, they used to do those career fairs. And I
Hmm.
swear I chose, like, you could choose 3 places you could go, and they would have these people talk to you about what their careers and what they do. And I would choose all the careers that I felt like didn't require you to go to college, because I had no desire to go to college. I hated school. I just wanted to get out of here. I'd had some horrible experiences at school too. So because of childcare issues, my mom and one of my aunts would share childcare responsibilities for my cousin and I. So my mom would keep us at night, and my aunt would keep us during the day because she worked third shift, or when we got out of school. So whenever my cousin moved schools, I moved schools, and they moved a lot. And so in that process, I ended up leaving a school where they loved me. And I think that was another thing, a revelation I just had. I would, get off the bus going into school, and they would just be all over me. Oh, she's so cute. Oh, she's so wonderful. Oh, 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 oh. So at this one school, I'm getting this. I have to switch schools. And I'm not getting any of that. It was in a racist part of town. My teacher was racist for sure. I had just tested into academically gifted, which we call back then AG, and she had me an LD, girl. How I go, like, one week I'm in academically gifted, the next week I'm in LD. And all the kids leaving to go to academically gifted at this school were all white. The only kids left in the classroom were all minority students.
Wow.
And again, so this is where, like I said, my mom made some really good decisions, and I am principally the person I am today because of her. But this is another instance where no one was standing up for me,
Yeah.
where I didn't feel like people were taking care of me. I knew where I belonged, and I voiced my concern, and it wasn't important enough for them to come see about what's happening at the school
Yeah.
with me. So I just
Now, is that true? Is that true, Brandy? Do you feel like it was it really not important enough?
I think it was more than she had the capacity to deal with it in the moment. Being a
Mm-hmm.
parent now and understanding all the things, you're like, okay, but girl, you still in school. You know you're not dumb. We know you're not dumb. You not being in this little academically gifted class is just not a fight that I'm willing to fight right now. But it meant a lot to me,
It meant a
right?
lot to you.
And I think, again, it translated and helped build into a 9-year-old who did not feel that she was enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the turn. You decide in 2022, January, enough is enough. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. Don't want to be this 9-year-old who still is feeling like she's not enough. There's somewhere in deep down that knows I am enough, but there also is the inner workings of me that's used to this way of thinking and has gone about life, has gone about love, has gone about relationship, has gone about my business, feeling this way. I've got to make a change. You decide to go back into therapy, but what's different this time? How do you go about it differently this time?
Um, like I said before, I had been so many times into so many different therapists. I knew what I didn't need. And I had also gone to health coaching school. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
light bulb moment for me was one of the health coaching school modules where one of the things that came up was attachment, and
Mm-hmm.
how kids form attachments and what that looks like. And that's when I
Mm-hmm.
realized that I had that attachment break with my mom around the age of 5 or 6, and
Yeah.
that was me constantly wanting to, like, pull him in. So
Mm-hmm.
I was ending a bad relationship and a series of bad friendships. So I had found myself in a friend group that my ex and I were both in. Like, they were his friends first, like the group of people were his friends first. We all started hanging, and the deceit, the dishonesty, the backstabbing, the lies, it almost took me out. Like the gaslighting, like it was really the gaslighting, because I saw it and I would say, hey, hold up, I'm seeing this. And they're like, girl, you tripping, that ain't happened. Or I didn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, but you did. And I'm saying, whatever. And it just got to
Right.
the point where I was like, okay, this is bad. And so what I noticed as I thought about it, I went back to what I learned in health coaching school about attachment. I started thinking about all the relationships that I'd had and how I was people pleasing. And so I wanted to know, why do I have this desire to please people? Like, I know where it comes from, because of this, attachment theory that I
Mm-hmm.
learned. But how do I fix it? And there has to be something rooted really deep. There are things there that I know I'm not tapping into. And I have this thing that I tell my clients. I'm like, we can search for answers, and the first thing that comes up is usually not the answer, right? I
Yes.
need you to keep searching until all is well with your soul, until you say, you know what, I feel good about where I'm at. I feel good about this answer. I feel good about moving forward. And so we just talked about, I'm like, solution, what's the solution? Hit it, move on. So there were plenty of times I'd gone to therapy and terminated thinking, okay, I'm fixed. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm back here again. Like, I keep learning
Yeah.
the same lesson. So basically, you're not fixed. And what I
Mm-hmm.
learned is, if there is no fix, this is a
Mm-hmm.
journey, right?
Yes.
You're gonna encounter different scenarios of the same thing, and it's gonna keep triggering that little part of you,
For
and you
sure.
have to make a decision to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
And the little girl in me I never gave that little girl permission to stand up, to speak up, to have voice.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And what's remarkable about you, though, is that I know that you have that voice for others.
I do.
You are the person. You are the person that you wanted your mom and dad to be, right? You
Mm,
are the person that stands up for people.
mhm.
Brandi, for those of you who don't know her personally, does an immense amount of advocacy work, and civil rights work, and just really being a voice for not only the voiceless, but just for a generation of people that really need that leader, who will stand up for them. So you are that person,
Mhm.
but gave yourself permission to be that person for yourself.
Yes.
The person that has always needed it since
Yes.
5, you know, that
Mhm.
has always needed it and wanted others to do that. I feel like that therapeutic journey for you is realizing that that power is within you.
It is. And I think I
Yeah.
always knew it. I just was afraid. Like, what does it look like to
Mm-hmm.
stand up for yourself? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I had done it as a child, and it didn't produce the rewards that I
It ain't hit the same. It didn't hit the same.
yeah, it didn't
Mm-mm.
produce the rewards. I actually got in trouble for standing up for myself sometimes, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was talking back. It was, um, being
Being
disrespectful.
disrespectful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so again, I'm people pleasing. I don't ever want to do something that's going to make someone angry at me, that's going to cause my mom harm, trauma, sadness, and so I never stood up for myself.
And I feel like what we have to end up realizing, what we all realize, right, is that hopefully we get to the place where we can realize that in not standing up for ourselves, we're making it comfortable for other people to disrespect us, to
Amen.
walk over us, to not
Mhm.
take care of us.
Mhm.
You standing up for yourself was a major turning point for you in saying, I matter, I'm important, my feelings are justified. If by no one else, they're justified by me. You know, I feel the way that I feel, and I have a right to feel this way based on all of the things that I've been through. And I have a right to take charge of my life in the way that I see fit at this big age.
Right, at this big
At
age.
this big
Exactly.
this big age. So I want to start talking about SoulMed, because obviously all of this has kind of led you to where you are today with the organization that you've created, SoulMed. But it's not just, you talk about health coaching, and I know that health coaching is not just mental health, that's a big part of it, but it's also lifestyle, it's also physical health, our physiological systems that are going on in our body. And I feel like there was some sort of light bulb moment for you there as well within the last couple of years. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So I've always been very petite. So when I talked about the ladies in elementary school, like, oh my God, like loving me, falling all over me, it was because I was literally probably the size of a 2-year old at 5. I was, my mom says to this day, you were probably wearing 2T, 3T at 5 years old. I remember just getting into like girls like 7, though, for people who have kids and understand children's clothes sizes, in size 7 to 14, probably in late middle school, so like 8th, ninth grade. So I was very, very small, and I would go to the doctor, never had any health issues. And then around 38, 39, my A1C started to trend up. My waist started to get bigger. And for most people, you're like, okay, you're aging, that's going to happen. But it was, for me, different. Like, I'd never had any health issues, never had any health challenges. I was always super skinny. I could never get to 100 pounds and stay. Like, getting to 100 pounds was like big for me. At my highest pregnancy weight, I was 123 pounds. So to have health challenges, I was like, oh my God. When I got to 105, I applauded myself, and I was consistently at 105, but then it just kind of skyrocketed. Then I started having blood pressure issues, of course, the mental health issues. So I, started to hit a wall where I was not focused. And I remember my favorite word for about 3 years, from about 2012, and I'm saying 3 years, it was longer than that, from about 2012 till about 2017. So for about 5 years, was these people trying me. Like, everybody was trying me. I was ready to fight every day. I woke up and went to bed with some I wish I would energy, right? Every single day. And it was the focus, though. Like, when I started seeing professionally, I wasn't performing at the level that I'm normally used to. I was like, okay, so something is wrong. I need to go see about this. So I thought I had like a heart condition. And my doctor was like, no, you have anxiety. And she put me on medication. And I resisted it for a minute, but it actually was good because it cleared my head. And once I came up, I realized, like, I feel like I had been buried 6 feet under. And there was like this little window where I could see up and see what was happening around me. But I was like really not in the world. It was like all happening, and I was just kind of watching and things. That's why I felt like everything was happening to me.
Yeah.
So I had to get out of that. I had to get out of my own way and really come out of that.
Yeah. So how are you now health wise? What have you done to kind of change those outcomes?
I started health coaching school, learning a lot
Okay.
about how my body works. Like, I promise you, I laid in bed, um, and I'll never forget, it was December 19th, 2019. And I was like, God, because I was actually becoming disillusioned with my work by, my degree is in journalism, public relations, and that's what I've been doing for so long. And had a very good career. I worked with a Grammy Award winning singer, NFL and NBA player, WNBA players, federal government agencies. I've had experiences that a lot of people would just dream about having, right? And but I was tired of it. The field was changing. Everybody, all they cared about was media relations and being seen, and that wasn't really where my specialty was. So I was becoming disillusioned with the work. But I had these 2 kids, one in college, and one going to college, and well, actually, about in December, he was in college. It was his freshman year. And then my daughter, who was soon to be going to college. And so I'm like, Lord, I can't quit no job. I got to, eat. So help me figure something
Right.
else out. So long story short, I actually enrolled in health coaching school, and each module helped me learn a little bit more about what I was going through, about my body, about what I should be doing, and how my lifestyle was really contributing to the mental fog, the physiological issues I was having with my A1C. So I was able to learn how to eat differently for my body, learning about bioindividuality, which really means that just because they say kale is good doesn't mean kale is good for you. Just because they say, dairy and cheese are good sources of protein doesn't mean that that's a good source of protein for you. I honestly, the only breakfast food that I ever really loved were eggs. And I found out that I had a food sensitivity to eggs. And so food sensitivities are different than food allergies. Food allergies, it's like anaphylactic shock, hives. You immediately know my body is rejecting this, abort mission. Food sensitivities show up as bloating, as mental fog, as eczema, as alopecia, as, all the things that we say, oh, that's just, what happens, go to the doctor,
Right.
get you
I
some.
have eczema, but not really understanding that there's something that I might be
Exactly.
ingesting or,
Exactly.
that's causing it. Yeah.
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 That's causing that gastrointestinal issue.
Wow. So you go into this program thinking, I'm going to learn how to heal others and realize ways in which you can heal yourself.
Absolutely. But I think, honestly, I went and they taught us this, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this now because it was preached so much through the program, or if I really thought about this before. But it was always for me about what I learned so that I can share with others. I always I coach from a place of experience, right? And so I want to be able to say I've tried this. I don't want it to be something that someone's told me about. I want this to be something that you know about, or that I can safely give you a recommendation
Sure.
for. Yeah, because I've
Sure.
done it. I've tried it. But again,
Sure. And so,
recognizing bioindividuality, it may not work for you, but I want you to know that at least it's safe, right?
absolutely. Yeah. So this then leads us to SoulMed. Tell us about SoulMed.
SoulMed is my passion project. It's a thing that I want to leave as my legacy. It is a mental health coaching organization for Black women who are at burnout stage, who are like, you know what, I am tired. And you don't have to be at full burnout stage. You just need to be burnt out from something.
Sure.
Because and that's a key piece, because it's in that environment that you are really willing to do the things that have to be done to make the changes. So if we think about all the reasons that uh, diets don't work, or exercise regimens don't work, or you go back to where you were before, it's because the why. You have to know your why. And so when you're at a place of burnout, you are literally desperate and you're like, my why is because I don't ever want to get here again. And so you're willing to make those hard and difficult choices. Like I've had to give up alcohol. I've had to um give up potatoes and potato chips, and think about eating like no meat some meals, right? And it's not all meals. And I think, that's the other thing. A full vegan diet, or, full vegetarian diet, like you don't want to go cold turkey. You want to learn your body. You want to learn what works for your body. And so I've had to really start to get mindful. And so that really just means being intentional and thinking about exactly what I'm doing. So I'm saying this. What does that really mean to me? I'm doing this. What does that really mean? And I'm making this decision. And what does that really mean? So I said I have to give up, that I had to give up alcohol. That doesn't mean that I don't slip up. So this weekend I went out and I had a drink. And I use this tool. It's called Lumen. I use that to measure how my metabolism is working. So every morning you get up, you blow into this little device, and it kind of analyzes your breath and tells you if you're burning carbs, fat, or what you need to, and how you should eat for the rest of the day for your body. and the state that your metabolism is in. And so I woke up and I was burning all carbs yesterday morning. And it was because I ate late, I drank late, and I was eating carbs, because you gotta feed your body grease and carbs when
Right.
you're eating at when you're drinking alcohol. And so I've been able to notice that. I notice how the difference when I'm not drinking and I go for days with or weeks without drinking, my body feels refreshed. I have a ton of energy. And so that's my why. Like, so now going back to the sluggish feeling and struggling to get out of bed, I don't want to do that, because I now see the difference. I can feel it,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so it's hard, because even it's been since I didn't start drinking till I was 26. So I didn't drink in college. So it's only been, the last however many, I'm not trying to do the math in my head, years, that I've kind of gotten into this space where I feel really poorly in the morning and I'm really sluggish. So I'm really, starting to get my mojo back. That's my why, because I
Mhm.
want to be in this state all the time.
Yes. 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 So, what programs are you offering with SoulMed, and how can people, get involved?
So my signature program is an 18-week program where women are able to tap into that self-awareness. We talk about what it means to be self-aware and why that's the best starting point for any types of changes you're making to your mental and physical health. Because again, that why you want to be firm in what it is that you're trying to get out of your life and work on getting that out of your life. But we don't often know that. So we start with a 18-week journaling experience. So there's a book, it's called Soul Healing. And there are 18 weeks of journaling. And we spend 1 week on each journal prompt. And during the course of the 18 weeks, you also spend a month working on your physical health. So about 6 weeks in, we'll start this 4-week journey where you are switching and changing your lifestyle habits, what you're eating, what you're drinking. So we're eliminating things and adding things in. And I'm teaching you why this works and why you should do this. We talk about food diaries. We develop a vision statement for your life. So you start to say, the fundamental question is, what do you want for your life? And so that guides us through this process. So every week you're learning how to get to what you want for your life. And I call that the golden life, that life of peace and ease and
Mm.
softness. So that you are able to create those boundaries, those hard boundaries. You're able to know specifically. So today I'm not feeling too good. My such and such feels off. I may need to increase my green vegetables today, or I need to hydrate. I need to drink more water.
Mm.
Like, you're able to start learning your body. So we go through this process for 18 weeks. And it's an amazing journey. And it's a long journey, right? And I know,
Mhm.
some of the women that I've talked to about it, their hesitation is that it's so long, because people want quick
That's
fixes.
4.5 months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But again, how much are you willing to sacrifice to save your life?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what's so interesting about this, and it feels like a very full circle moment for you as the practitioner and as the founder of SoulMed, is that, that first, your first venture into therapy, going into this man's
Journal.
office, sitting down, him telling you to journal, and you being like, I'm out. That's not happening. I'm
Right.
not doing that. You don't understand me or my kind. And here you are with an 18-week journaling program.
Yes.
Okay. It's so full circle. What is different now? What is different now about this journaling process than the one that your therapist in college, that first therapist, was asking you to take part
I understand the why behind it now. I
in?
understand
Hmm.
that he was trying to get me to explore my feelings and my emotions, partly because we go into therapy, excuse me, and we're all over the place. And you want to have a focus. And so again, that's why we sit down, we do an exercise called the circle of life. So one of the things that I talk to them about is primary food and secondary food. Primary food, you would think, is what's on your plate, but it's not. Primary food are all the things in your life, like your finances, your health, your relationships, your home environment, and your love life. All of those things influence what you put on your plate. So you could be an emotional eater and not recognize it, right? But we're going to tap into
Mm.
that. You're going to find that. And what I also found is that we're so busy running and doing that we never actually sit down and figure out what we like, what brings us
Yeah.
peace, so that we can do
Yeah.
more of that, giving ourselves permission to lean into peaceful
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah.
And so that's what I learned through this process. And I found it so powerful that I wanted to create this experience for women.
Yeah.
And the book is on Amazon, and I'm like, people can go and do it themselves. And then something, because I have a book of affirmations. That's actually where I started with affirmations, because I found myself when I was having these panic attacks saying affirmations to myself. And so I created a book of
Mhm.
affirmations. And my sister said to me, this book is great, but what's next? And so I thought about it. I was
Mm.
like, people need guidance. They don't want you just to
Yeah.
hand them a book. They really want someone to
They
hold
want to
their
walk
hand through
through
the
it.
process.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And you're doing that.
Hmm.
You're doing just that. You're holding people's hand, not only holding them accountable, but holding them up while they hold themselves
Yeah.
accountable and walk through this journey with them. So I know you have a special gift for listeners of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So I'm giving the listeners of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff a forever discount on the 18-week program. So
This is huge. This is
yes, the
huge.
the,
This is
the
huge.
full program is $3,600, but for you all,
Mhm.
it will always and forever be $2,400. So you all will get about
Wow.
$1,200 off forever and ever. And you can lock in that discount by just going to my website and clicking the button that says, I'm ready to get curious. And you will be added
Mm.
to a list. And once you're on that list, as soon as the program launches, I will send you the details for how to register and the discount code. And all I want you to do, because my goal here is definitely to make money, because like I said, I got to feed these kids
I
and
understand.
myself. But ultimately, what I want is for as many Black women as possible to be able to um, receive the benefit of this program. And I've put my heart, my soul, and my life
Mhm.
story into this. I am very open. I'm very vulnerable with my clients.
Mhm.
I'm actually teaching a parenting class right now, or teaching this class to a group of parents. And one of the ladies in the class said, I would rather come here than go to therapy.
Mm.
And so it's a group coaching situation. And so you learn to trust the other women going through this journey with you. And so you also have other accountability partners. You can hear other stories. You can, if
Mhm.
you get deep enough and you allow yourself to get vulnerable enough,
Mhm.
you can start to see yourself in their stories and start to
Absolutely.
see places where you can make changes based on the things that you see them doing. Because it's often hard to look at yourself and say, okay, I need
Mhm.
to change this. Um, and you should have an
Yeah.
accountability partner, someone that's going to be
Absolutely.
extremely honest with you.
And that was one of the reasons why I reached out to you and really wanted you to come on today, because I feel like your story is so powerful and there's so many layers to it. But I do think, and one of the things that I love about the work that we're doing here on the podcast is in in our guests' vulnerability, in people telling their stories. My hope is that our listeners find something to connect to,
Mhm.
that they see themselves within all of the layers of our guests, and understand that if we see success, right? That if we see someone doing what we want to do, or someone having a life or a relationship or anything, that it doesn't come without a lot of work. And oftentimes it comes with a past. Like, there are
Mhm.
things that we have to do to get there. I want people to see that we're more alike than we are different. And we all have our shit. And we've all been through a few things in order to get here. And if I can do it, if Brandi Williams can do it, then you can do it too. So I want you guys to definitely check out soulmed.co for more information on the SoulMed Health Collaborative, for more information on Brandi Williams. I want you to go online and don't don't walk but run and get that special discount by clicking on is it the Get Curious
Yes, so
tab?
it says, I'm
Yeah.
ready to get curious.
I'm ready
Yeah.
to get curious. Go ahead and click that on so you'll be the first to know when that program is up, and you can get your special discount. And Brandi, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being a part of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff.
Thank
I
you.
so appreciate you and everything that you shared here today. And just thank you so much for just sharing so much of yourself with the world. We appreciate you. We appreciate you standing up for others, and we appreciate you standing up for yourself in this season of your life.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I want to say one last thing. I want to encourage everybody
Yes.
to go listen to track 5 on Lauryn Hill's MTV Unplugged 2. And I'm not getting paid to say this, but there's she makes a comment on there about how everybody, she went to Disney World with her kids, and they wanted to take her in through the front, and she said, no, let's go through the back. And she saw all the chaos in the back. She said, and that's people's lives, right? The chaos in the back. And she said, everybody should get a chance to see the chaos in the back. So don't be afraid to show your chaos in the back, because someone may be blessed from your chaos.
Absolutely. Well, I'm blessed. I'm blessed today, as our listeners are as well, from the from the chaos of your life, Brandi. And it's a beautiful, beautiful mess. We appreciate it. We love it here, and we'd love for you to come back and just talk some more about. I know we talked offline about you coming back and talking about your advocacy work, Hip Hop Caucus, the awards that you recently got for that advocacy work. I want you to come back and talk about that too, because I think that is important. But thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, this has been Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. We thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on all of the platforms. We are on Spotify, which is where you can view this podcast as well as listen to it. But we're also available on Apple Music, Amazon Music, and YouTube podcasts. So just get in where you fit in, get it wherever you can. And just thank you so much for being a part of the program. I'll see you next week. Ciao.